welcome back to my channel where I make videos about tech, unboxing, product reviews, events, and some fun stuff. And for today's video, I will be talking about the interview process for an IT support role. And this will be a guide for the technical questions that they might ask you for an interview. And I will be sharing with you guys the actual questions that I was asked during my interview when I was applying for IT roles or IT jobs. So if you are interested in this video, please keep on watching, and without further ado, let's get started with the video. So in my previous video, I talked about the overview of what a tech interview is like, from the introduction, what kind of questions they ask you, technical behavioral questions, and also the closing where you ask questions for the interviewer or the employer. So if you want to check out that video, I will include the link down in my description box below, and check it out if you want to see an overview of how a tech interview is going to be. But for today's video, I will be just focusing on the technical aspect of the interview and the questions that they will be asking you, or they might ask you during the interview process. And I will also give some tips on how to answer these questions, and I will also share with you guys the actual questions that I was asked during my interview phase when I was applying for different kind of jobs and roles. So interviews for IT positions or other tech positions is very challenging, and it's different from the other interviews because they ask you very technical questions which test your proficiency or your skill set. So it is like studying for an exam, preparing for an exam where you really go through and review all the terms, the definitions, how things work, your troubleshooting skills. So preparation is the key for this kind of interviews. It will be really tough, but if you are prepared, I always say that better be over-prepared than under-prepared. I think that you will be all set and you will be confident to answer the technical questions in the interview. So the very first tip that I'm gonna give you, especially when you are preparing for the technical part of the interview, is to go through the job description for the role that you're applying for and you are interviewing for, because the technical question will be based on the requirements or the skills that they are looking for in an employee. Look for the technologies that they are using, if they are using Windows, they are using MacBook or Linux, because all of the questions will just revolve around what they are using and what you will be working on in the future if you get applied for that job. So look closely into that and just review and study and research on the terms that they have put in the description, such as DNS, DHCP, VPN. If they mention all of those technologies or terminologies, most likely your technical questions will be around all of those technologies. Okay, so now for the moment of truth, let us move on now to the technical questions, the actual questions that employers or interviewers might ask you during the interview. So depending on the role that you are applying for, if they are looking for some IT support that supports Windows desktop, of course, all of or most of the questions will be based around Windows. But if the role has been supporting different operating systems in the environment or the company, like Windows, Linux, and MacBooks, expect to be asked questions revolving all those different operating systems. So really look into the job description, because that's the key, and that's where you will get the idea on the questions that they will ask you. If they have mentioned DNS, TCP/IP, OSI model, they will ask you about networking questions. If they have mentioned Linux, of course, they will ask some Linux stuff. But for now, I'm talking about the overall IT roles and the actual questions that I was asked. So I will be talking about 4 categories of questions that they have asked me. And I was asked questions about Windows, about networking, about Linux, and about MacBooks. So let's get started with the Windows questions. Most of the time, before interviewers begin asking the technical questions, they will ask you first to rate yourself on how proficient or skilled you are with a specific technology or category. They will ask you most of the time to rate yourself from 1 to 10 how proficient you are with Windows, with Linux, with MacBooks, with networking. Okay, so the following questions were the Windows questions that I was asked during my interviews. Explain what user account control is. Difference between OST and PST files. What are the tabs under Windows logs in the event viewer? Difference between MBR and GPT. What is Active Directory? Have you created user accounts in AD? Okay, so when you're answering Windows questions or anything that asks you to define terms, just explain everything in your own words. I think that will be easier. And if you're not able to define a term, at least set an example or just tell the interviewer how it works. That way you will be still able to show them that you are knowledgeable and familiar with that question or certain term that they ask you. For the question, have you created something or have you done this? For example, have you created a user account in AD? If your answer is yes, you can elaborate further on what you have done when you created the user. You can tell them what the process you did when creating users in AD. And to be honest, I wasn't able to answer all of the Windows questions because I think some are really hard. And if you have not encountered the terms or the technologies that they are asking about, especially the Outlook stuff, I didn't even know the difference between OST and PST files when I was asked that because I really never worked on Outlook before. So that's okay as long as you can just explain the foundation or the easy questions or the questions that are really common and that you should know about. So it's okay if you miss out on some questions. What's important is that you answered the majority of the questions, or if not, then that's okay. That's a lesson learned, and at least you know what you have to prepare for the next time, and you have an idea of what questions they might ask you. So let's move on to the next category. I think this is my favorite out of all the technical questions that they have asked me. I think this is my specialty or my forte. So this is the networking questions that I was asked. If there's networking involved in your job, of course the number one question is they will have you explain what the OSI model is. You really have to learn this, you really have to know this. You really need to know all the 7 layers of the OSI model. It's up to you how you wanna name all the 7 layers, how you wanna explain it. If you wanna start from the upper layer to the bottom layer or vice versa, that's okay. It's just the way you explain things. Just make sure that you know every layer because that is gonna show that you know the fundamentals of networking, so that's gonna be a big plus. Okay, so the other networking questions that I was asked was explain DNS, explain DHCP, when do we use static IP versus DHCP, what is ping, what is the difference between IP address and MAC address? And sometimes they ask you questions about your troubleshooting methods, such as how do you troubleshoot an issue with a user having Wi-Fi issues? So that will be asked a lot too, how you troubleshoot or resolve an issue if a user encountered this issue, blah, blah, blah. So in answering this, just a tip that just give them as many ways as you can and not just one method or one way to resolve a problem, because sometimes one way or one method won't work and you have to resolve it with other different methods. So it's better to give more options when you are resolving a problem. For example, the Wi-Fi issue, give them as many as you can, as many possible ways as you can to resolve the issue, just like flushing the DNS or removing the DNS server and trying to ping google.com if they can ping that, or check the access points if other devices are connecting to the access point, or that's just the only machine that is not connecting or getting bandwidth. So there are many ways to resolve an issue, and just name a lot if you can. I was also asked about MacBook because the company that I'm currently working on has a lot of users using MacBook. So really check the job description, because you might be applying for a job that looks for someone that knows both Windows and MacBooks. But these are the MacBook questions that I was asked during my interview. How do you mount a server in Mac? What is the equivalent of Task Manager in Mac? What is a keychain and how do you fix a corrupted one? What is recovery mode in Mac and when do you use it? So I also applied for jobs that has Linux users and uses Linux for their host environment. So the questions that they asked me about Linux are the following. Command to navigate through different directories. Command to make a new directory. Command to display files in a directory. Command to display networking info such as IP address and gateway. Difference between sudo and su. So those were the exact technical questions that I was asked during all of my interviews throughout the years when I was applying for jobs in IT. Of course, it will differ on the position that you're applying for and the level of experience that they are looking for and the applicant. For entry-level roles, just make sure that you know the fundamentals, the basics in Windows. You know what Active Directory is, what the user profile is, what recycle bin is, what a partition is, what Task Manager is, what is an event viewer, and if you are beginning with networking, know the OSI model, DNS, DHCP, VPN, that gets asked a lot. So just study on that, prepare, review, prepare possible questions also that you can answer to prepare for the interview. That helps a lot. Or you can also answer the questions that I just provided with you just to prepare for your interview as well. And if you have any questions, just let me know on the comment section down below. So that would be it for my video for today. This is a technical guide for IT interviews and the exact questions that I was asked. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any recommendations on the next video that you want me to make or you want to see, just leave a comment down below. And I hope to see you guys in my next video, and thank you so much for watching.